Hello, everyone. I'm super excited. This is Making a Difference with Sandra Oko, another episode. And today we have a very great and honored guest who is amongst us, who will be speaking and sharing his life story. What do we do on Making a Difference with Sandra Oko? We've gone beyond just being, trying to survive, trying to be successful, but living a life of significance where we leave an impact, going just beyond yourself. That yes, things can be working for you, but what about others? Being considerate, being a person of impact, being a person of difference, making a difference, putting a smile on everybody's face. Yes, you cannot be God, but as much as possible, you are now an ambassador. You're representing him here on this side of the planet. So you don't want to look at, so far everything is working fine for me. I don't care what others feel, but no. But we have great minds, leaders in their different calling, doing a lot of great things in the world. And we have one of our special guests who will be coming to share a story with us, how he started from zero to becoming an hero today, and how what he is doing to making a difference in his world is really impacting his world. There was even one of this episode, or one of this journey that he went to Cameroon, and I'm like, you're so energetic, so many things you did over there, and how did you come about it? He said a lot of story. He'll be sharing us and taking us into a deeper dive on what makes him who he is and how God has helped him to becoming a success and an hero in his time. And before I start, I want to just introduce myself. My name is Sandra Uko. I'm a Maxwell Leadership Certified Team Member, Speaker, Coach, and Trainer. I'm also a member of the Toastmaster. It says this part of over 20 years in the IT industry and also a best-selling author. And in making a difference, we live a life of difference. We impact our world. So before I bring him on board, I'd like to read his resume. So welcome back. Yes, our guest today is Madison Ngafeeson. Dr. Ngafeeson is an award-winning business professor, an executive trainer, leadership consultant, and author. He is the founder and president of two leadership companies, namely Lead Missions International and the Superior Lead LLC. Madison is also an international certified speaker, trainer, and coach with the Maxwell Leadership Company. And as a business professor and a former director of the MBA program, Madison brings together a wealth of experience in teaching business professionals the reputable Maxwell Leadership Curriculum, awesome, to add value to professionals all around the world and the globe. In the past 6 years, Dr. Ngafeeson has held leadership conferences, seminars, masterminds for leaders in various countries. Through his organization, Dr. Ngafeeson has trained over 10,000 leaders and emerging leaders from over 55 countries. When are you going to be in our country too? He believes that personal leadership is the key to leading a successful life. Dr. Ngafeeson latest book, The Day Before Tomorrow, How to Make Today Counts, has been read around the world and is currently being used in masterminds and courses to prepare the students and the career professionals for achieving the life of their dreams. Dr. Ngafeeson and his wife, Claudia, are blessed with three beautiful generals. So glad to bring you on board, sir. And I'm sure my guests are excited.
Thank you.
Hello. That was a great resume.
Thank you very much. It's so good to be with you today, Sandra.
So when are you coming to my country? When are we collaborating and going everywhere in Africa?
Yeah, I think one of these days I'll be there. But by the way, I've trained people from your country. I trained the entire House of Enugu, House of Representatives of Enugu State in Nigeria, but I trained them
Oh,
in Detroit, the entire House of Assembly. I've
wow.
also trained a bunch of presidential advisors to President Buhari. We did that in Baltimore, Maryland, those advisors for the Niger Delta area. So I've done some training with some people in Nigeria, but just I did it in the United States instead of Nigeria. But yeah.
This one is taking that leadership conference to the country. I'm excited to do that with you. Let me know when you think of doing that. We can collaborate in that aspect. So it's all, you're on the hot seat now. We just want to hear from you, sir. I know that I've just read your bio. You might have some things that I'm missing out that I didn't say, or maybe you didn't say the way I ought to have said it as a professor in leadership. We want to hear from you. How did you start? What was your passion? What's that driving force that moved you to becoming who you are today? We want to learn, and I'm sure our guests too want to hear from you.
So how many hours do we have?
No, not hours, maybe minutes, maybe about 40 minutes,
Anyway,
30 to 40 minutes.
I always like to look at myself like a little a village boy. I was born in the grasslands of the northwest region of Cameroon in Central Africa.
Okay.
I grew up with my grandfather and my grandmother in our little village. When my mom was pregnant, my father, vanished, and so she, as a teenager, was left. And so my grandparents thought that their job will be, to take their little grandson and to raise him up. So even till today, I still look at myself like that little village boy. I still remember those images back in the day when I was very little, and walking 6 miles to school and back in my village. I still remember the days when I did not wear any shoes. That I,
Hmm.
that having something to put on your feet was quite a luxury for
Yeah.
the rich people in the village. I still remember those days as though it was yesterday. Um, I was honored that I had a grandmother who really taught me unconditional love. And back in the day, growing up in the village, my grandmother will, when back in the day, I mean, people didn't have like, very, very few people had like record players and things like that, right? So most of the time you listen to the radio. So when they would play something like, Prince Nikombarga, who was a favorite artist back in the day, he had a special song called Sweet Mother. So she would make me listen to that song and say, you know what, that is who I am to you. I'm your sweet mother. I care about you. So my grandmother really taught me unconditional love because I was not really
Hmm.
her son, but he took me in. I'm the daughter's son, but she took me in as her own very son. In fact,
Beautiful.
later on in life, when I would come to stay with my own mom, biological mom, I didn't even know how to call her because I called my grandmother mom. So when she
Oh
came in
my
the picture,
God.
I was kind of struggling. I was calling her auntie, and then because again, it didn't quite.
Yeah, I understand. That
It,
bonding.
exactly.
You've not seen as a mom, you've seen your grandmom as a mom.
Exactly. And my grandfather also was kind of like my father because that is how I called him and that is how everybody knew him to be in my life. My grandfather was a registered nurse back then and he was the educated one in the family. My grandmother was not educated. He never went to school, but my grandfather was educated. So he's the one who taught me hard work. By the time I was living with him, he he unfortunately had been injected with uh, given an injection in the wrong spot, and it paralyzed him. So he couldn't work, and so he was struggling with that neural problem till the day of his dying.
Oh my
But
God.
but he
So
raised,
sorry.
it's okay.
Very emotional.
Yeah, but he lived for quite some years because I mean till I was off to university, that's when he passed away. So
Wow, that's
I
awesome.
were able to really have him for a long time. But he taught me hard work. He's the person. who really, really made me to take my
He was
schoolwork.
your mentor. He mentored you.
Exactly. And so when I look at him, and I look at how, even in that condition where he could not, he found it difficult to move because he would be shaking. His hands were not stable because of, because it affected his nerves in the body. But he would try to work, and he would try to teach me. So when I was growing up, I learned how to, because he became a farmer when he could not do what he could do.
Yeah.
So I learned how to farm, bananas, plantain, pineapples, plums, oranges, all kinds of fruit trees. I grew up coffee. I know how to farm coffee from the start to the finish, to when you plug it, you grind it, send it to the cooperative. So I grew up. So I always kind of see myself like a village boy in many ways, and especially now that I have finally, I am a couple decades old now. When I look back, I see how instrumental that upbringing has become to me, the lessons that I learned, and how it impacts the way I look at life today. Um,
Hmm.
because when my grandfather was, going through all of that he was going through, he kept saying, one day we will do this. He taught the villagers how to farm, uh, you know, what we call cash crops like coffee and guava and all of that. So, he became a model uh,
For
person
others to emulate.
in the village, because he taught them how to farm. He taught them how, in fact, he was even planning for mechanized farming instead of just subsistence farming. And he had
You
a
can see
dream.
what education is doing
Yes.
because he's educated.
Yes, and then he would even say that he wants to transform the nation. He actually wrote a book, and he said, "I want." He gave to his first son. I said, "He wants you. I want you to give this book to the president, because I want to talk to him. I want, you know." And so and I still remember those conversations with my grandfather when I was like 5 years, between 5 years and 8 years old, when all of this was happening. And even till today, I still hear those conversations. I still hear his drive, his desire to make the village better, his desire to he always planning. He even on his dying bed, he was always saying, "I want to do this. I want to be able to plant that. I want to be able to accomplish that." So I think that in many ways, my grandfather's ability to dream rubbed off on me, because those were my formative years. So when I left my grandfather at the age of 8, and my grandmother in the village, I lived with my auntie, my mother's younger sister, and I would stay with them until probably was like high school. That's when I learned how to read and write, and I had a love. I think my auntie and the husband, they inspired me the love to read, because the husband was a reader. So my very first book that I read was The Sleeping Beauty.
Hmm.
That was my very first book I ever read in my whole life, and that was when I was 8 years old. And then I read Akuni and the Beautiful Girl. Akuni, the Beautiful Girl. And then I read the African Writers series back in the day. That's when I got to do. I will marry when I marry, or Google what young girl. So I fell in love with all of the African writers, and Wole Soyinka and things like that. So that's what one of the part of my life that I think I got really. My auntie and the husband really helped me, is that ability learning how to read, and the importance of reading. And it was living with them that I graduated, and then I when we went to high school and then to university, where I was living on my own. But just before I could go into I could leave for university, at the last few months of high school, something radical really happened in my life, which was that I was attending a youth program, and someone had invited me, and I came, and during that program, I learned for the very first time um, that God loved me, that I was created by a creator, that he had very unique plans for me, that if I would submit my life to that creator, that if I would turn my life back up to him, he
Awesome.
can give me the blueprint that will help me live a more effective life. And so, and even though I was religious, and I was born going to church and things like that, that was kind of like new for me. And I like, wow, okay, so if I have a creator, and I knew that I had a creator, just I didn't have a relationship with him, and if it's that, giving my heart back to him will make me find my blueprint for life. Then I thought to myself, then okay, what have I got to lose? Like,
I'd rather do it.
yeah, so I said, well, I know that I wasn't living right, and I knew all of that, and I remember I telling the person who actually led me to Christ and all of that. I told her, I said, but my problem is this and this. I don't know how to stop that. I don't know how to stop this. And then she laughed and she told me, he said, you don't need to stop any of that, Madison. He says, when your creator comes in you, he will give you the power and the ability to do anything that he desires for you to do. I said, wow, good deal. If he's the one who's going to be doing that, I am willing. And then he let him come and do it. And that changed my entire life, because when I was in high school, my vision for university was crazy. Like, I would run around with all the girls, and then I was imagining all of the things I would do. But when I had that divine turn around, I began to be a person of purpose, and I began to seek, like, why am I here? That is that was the first time in my life where I began to think, like, man, what's going on? Like, why am I really here? And so my earlier influences were people like Dr. Miles Monroe is, a preacher, a speaker out of the Bahamas. He passed away a couple of years ago. But those are the early voices that I began to hear in my life, and I began to ask about purpose. That you should seek to know, if you were going to live for 80 years, if you're going to live for 60 years, it is better. Wouldn't it be good that you even know why you are here? Why should you live 80 years, and then at the end of 80 years, and you ask yourself, oh my God, so why was I here? And then it made a lot of sense to me. I said, whoa, really? Yeah. So that's when I really began to, my early years of university, I really began to ask myself, like, why was I created? Why am I here? Am I just an accidental discharge, or is there some purpose, something I should be living for, something I should be striving for? And I think when I was like second year in university, third year in university, I discovered a quote. I guess it was a Martin Luther King Jr. quote. It says there is something, I'm going to paraphrase it. I may not say it exactly the way it is. So there is something, so powerful. There is something so unique, that are worth dying for. It says, if a man has not found something he would die for, he is not fit to live. And
Yo,
those
that
are the things that,
factor,
yeah,
finding yourself.
yeah, that's one of the things that God, I'm like, whoa, my God, if a man has not found something he would die for, then he is not
Nothing.
fit to live. I said, wow, this is profound. And my university wall, my little room that I had, I always had that. I had that quote written on a piece of paper and put on the wall, because I wanted it to remind me that I had to live for something. So definitely when I had that turnaround, I began to make strides at living on purpose. I had, people my peers who helped to groom me, who helped to, uh, to, if you will, mentor me. And so I began to have peer mentors teaching me how I could live, and teaching me how to be a person on a mission. I also became part of the campus ministry of our university back then. And then through that, I began to see other young people who were passionate about the same things I was passionate about. And, in the space of 4 years, I went from just being just a floor member to being a leader in the largest, interdenominational organization in my country back then. So I became the assistant national coordinator for the entire country, and then the national coordinator for everything else. And that is where I started to learn about leadership, because when I took over as a national coordinator. My predecessor used to be a very charismatic leader. He used to be somebody that everybody knew in the country, I would say. He was a teenager when he was on TV and speaking and preaching and all of that. And everybody kind of knew him. So when he left the country and came to the United States for a graduate education. And then I succeeded him. Now, when
Hmm.
I succeeded him, I knew that I was a kind of good guy in the sense I knew I was a Christian, I was living right. And then, so I just thought, if you just are somebody who has good intentions, if you can't just live right, and then the organization, people in the organization just normally follow me. But I was, up for a very rude awakening because I discovered that no sooner did I take the reins of the organization, then people began to really doubt me and my leadership. For
Wow.
instance, they would, I would pitch a vision or say something I would like us to do, and then they would write emails to the United States and ask the former leader, like, okay, do you think what he's trying to say or do is say all right? And then they will know how to react to me. That is when I noticed that, oh my God, like just having good intentions is not enough. And that was the very first time in my life that I was seeking to, how do you have a big organization? How do I make these people to really, rally
Believe in
behind
you
me?
and trust you.
Yes, rally behind me so we can fulfill the mission for which we believe we are called. And so that's where I stumbled on a book, my very first leadership book in the world. And that was like in 2001. I stumbled on Developing the Leader Within You by John C. Maxwell.
Wow.
Yes. That was my very first leadership book that I ever read in my life. And when I read it, I said, oh my God, yes, okay. Okay, there is permission leadership. Yes. Oh, wow. Okay, there is production leadership. Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, so, and then I learned that those different levels of leadership. I said, oh my God. And then I said, man, there is something I need to do about it. So I studied it for myself, trying to survive as a leader, not to be kicked out by my peers, and trying to, and to me, everything that the book
The
was
book
saying was
said,
just like, was just like prophecy to me, because it was like, okay, the people, and then that's when the first time I learned that leadership is not a position. And then so I
it's
like, wow,
influence.
yeah. And then oh my God. So because I was like, okay, because I'm national coordinator, these guys are supposed to understand what that means. And they're supposed to just understand that when I speak, they should listen. But they were a little smarter than that. And they, they knew that leadership is influence, not a position.
Oh my
So
God.
now I had to start now uh, from the scratch, which was seeking the people's permission, which was earning their trust,
Yes.
which was being able to answer the questions that they were asking. John Maxwell talks about, the questions that every follower is asking. He talks about, do you care for me? What can you do for me? How can you help me?
You
And
just said it. The people don't care what you know. Once they know you care for them, they will follow you. So you
exactly.
just said it.
Exactly. Do you care? Do you care? So when I began now to, explain to them, like, I'm really here to help. I'm really here to move our organization forward, and began now to build relationship, that I saw now, oh, things began to change little by little. And then it was a fascinating thing. So that is what really got my fascination
Awesome.
with the subject of leadership, because it changed my own life. It made me gain friends. It made my leadership survive for how many years? For the 6 years that I led an entire
Community.
national organization, and we
Mm.
moved that organization from where it was to the stratosphere. We're able to reach out to nearly every region or province in my country then, and that be, that became the foundation for what for the possibility that leadership can do. And so while by the way, we were a youth organization, and our thing was, it was evangelism. So we were uh, helping other young people come out of all
Addiction.
terrible life and find Christ, and then by so doing, live or lead the life that they were born or created to live.
Leave.
So as we began doing that back in my country, I noticed that it was affecting not only the young people, it was affecting our parents, because when I came to Christ, my mom, my dad, they were not in Christ. They were all going to church and all of that. But so when they thought that we were trying to challenge them, like young people, what do they know about the Bible? We have been here before. Some of these people were so we face a lot. I faced a lot of antagonism in my earlier years and in what I believed in, and so beginning little by little, years afterwards, I began to see the generation that was before me begin to turn around and begin to listen to me and begin to follow me. And then it really got my attention. But then there is something that I noticed, that as we were advancing and doing all what we were doing, the people in authority, the people that were well to do, the people that were already in a formal positional leadership, they were more difficult to really crack crack through. They were very difficult. They lived in quarters we will never go to, because they live in a rich neighborhoods.
And that's leadership for them. Leadership was position for
Yes.
them. So they
Yeah.
believe that that's our level. So you
Exactly.
have got to climb to become there. So when
Exactly.
you begin to see leadership in the other way, leadership is influence.
Mm.
Leadership is caring. Leadership is servanthood.
Mm.
It changes all perspective of leadership.
Yeah. So when we began interacting with those guys, it was very difficult. They live in fences. All of their homes were, very walled, high fences. Nobody could reach them. So I began to have a desire in my heart back then, and that was in the, in the early 2000s. And I said, well, you know what? If I have an opportunity to really be able to understand leadership and be in a place where I can influence those people in authority, in government, in civil society that had this great influence, and if I could find a way to penetrate those walls, to be in those, to be able to go to those neighborhoods, to be able to go wherever I can to reach those, I would really be happy with my life. And it was that really made me to want to come to the United States to seek for a graduate education, and hopefully it could help me to have that influence. So in 2007, I handed over my organization to my successor, and I started my journey to the U.S. But my journey to the U.S. was really fraught with a lot of challenges, because I was leaving what will be like. Because I resigned from my healthcare job that I left from university to serve in that organization. So I didn't have like an official formal salary or so. I think when I was there, I was earning something like $100 a month when I was serving with them. And that is if the $100 would even come that particular month. So, so when I had a dream that I want to come to the US, learn, study, and so that I could become even more impactful in my country and all of that, then of course the obvious thing was finances. So we didn't have much finances. I just been married at that time. We had my wife and I, we had two children. My wife was a stay-at-home mom because I was going out all the time speaking and doing things like that. So we needed somebody to hold the fort down, and so she played that very important role. And so when it was time to move to the United States, I had a vision, I had everything, except I didn't have the finances.
And provision always comes when there's a vision. There is always a pro that comes after the vision. But sometimes it could be tough.
Yeah, right. You're
And
right.
it would surely come true. So let's hear.
So what you're saying is very true, and that's one of the things that really helped me to take the leap of faith, if you will, was the fact that just before then I heard again Dr. Miles Monroe. He said that that first comes the vision, and then the provision. So he said, if you are not interested in running the vision and operating the vision, you don't expect
the provision doesn't come. Support doesn't come.
Yes.
People want to see if you're driven. If the dream you think you have is true.
Exactly.
How passionate are you about that dream?
Exactly.
So when they see the way you're pursuing it, then you can get followers.
Exactly. So I took a leap of faith. So I came to the United States in January of 2007 with $600 to my name. I was coming for graduate school. I had a mountain of thousands of dollars in tuition, and I didn't have money to pay for that. It came with $600. By the way, $600 that was borrowed money because my mom got it from a credit union, and then gave part of me for me to be able to buy my flight ticket, and the remainder was $600. And I think I left my wife with $100 or so. Um, and that is how I entered the United States, 14th of January,
Hmm.
2007.
Lord,
And it
what
was
an
a
exodus.
yeah, and 2 days after that time, I would need to report to my school, to my university, and then pay the rest of the money that I needed to pay in terms of tuition and all of that. And so, one of the things that has the biggest lessons that I've learned in my life was probably beginning from that very moment. Because when I was coming to the United States, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what to look to. But I think that I was wise enough to always know to put the right people around me. I always knew that in life you have to follow, those who are going in the same direction with you. So when I came to the United States, the very first night I called my mentor, who was the person I succeeded in the organization, my leader. I told him, I said, I don't want to spend the night anywhere else. I want to come to your home because I have some things to discuss with you. So he was very generous. He sent somebody to the airport, picked me up. I came to him and I was like, I need to talk to you. I came on a Saturday night. So we slept, have a rest that night. And the next day was a Sunday. We went to church, came back. He took me to a Chinese restaurant. That was the first time I was sitting in a Chinese restaurant in America. I saw back in my country, the portions of food are normally tiny. Like I saw people eating volumes of food, but cultural shock everywhere. I'm like, wow, like this is interesting here. But then my heart was pounding inside because I had $600 to my name, thousands of dollars to pay in terms of tuition. I didn't know what to do about it. Nobody knew me here. Back in my home country, maybe I would say that, yeah, there's some people who would know this guy is a good guy, but nobody knew me here. Nobody knows that name here. And so the next day, I got to talk with my mentor, and I told him all of the dire circumstances that I was facing, and he looked at me, smiled at me, and gave me words that I will never forget till I pass away. He said to me, "If God brought you here, make no small plans."
Wow. Awesome. If God brought you here, make no small plans. That's awesome.
And those words, like, like it's like they hit me like a ton of bricks,
Wow.
and made me throughout my time that I was going through graduate school, and I was just merely creaking and scratching, and depending on all kinds of things, like I would do some kind of odd jobs. I was going to school in New Orleans back in the day, in 2007. um, you know New Orleans was just recovering from Katrina, because Katrina hit,
Yeah.
in 2005. So it was two
Yeah.
years after Katrina. Homes were still underwater. Homes that were underwater were, they were just drained. Everything was messed up. So I would go and do odd jobs, like we were gutting homes and cleaning homes for $50 a day. So imagine cleaning like homes that were underwater for $50 a day just to survive. You know, just to survive. And but finally, I finished my master's degree, and from there, and then I moved over to the University of Texas to do my PhD, and then I moved up to north to Michigan to start working, as an academic and all that. So I've been through, very
Awesome. The
interesting.
way you are saying this story looks like, the moment you just got your master's, PhD, everything became pam, pam, pam. You didn't tell us all the rigors because I could imagine, people would have said, okay, why don't you stop at master's level and begin to make money? At least rest from all the struggles. But you see,
Yeah,
that's what he said. Don't, if God brought you here, don't act small. What did you say?
make no small plans.
Wow, that was. I think I need to put this down so I don't.
If God
If
brought you
God
here,
brought you here,
make no small plan.
you got
So
brought
he's the
you.
person who challenged me to say, if God brought you here, then make God-sized plans for your life. So, so when I actually finished my master's degree, I would have loved to work, but listen to the year I graduated. I graduated in 2008. That's where the financial crisis hit America. 2008. People were being laid off from work. I was an international. I couldn't even compete for any job. I didn't have the credentials to work here, so I had to make sure I follow the strict adhere to my status as an international student. So I couldn't even work. I couldn't. There were no jobs. So the best thing I did was turn around again. Use my what they call optional practical training, which is an employment permit that they give you for a year. Use that one for a year. Go back to do my PhD because then I would
Yes,
have to
you just
go
have to
home.
be in agreements. You have to be in status.
Exactly. I have to be in compliance. So I had to go back again to do my PhD. And by the way, I thank God for my, some of my professors because they really saw promise in me, and they said, Madison, this is where you need to be. You need to go there, and they helped me, to know that I was doing the right thing. So I went and did. Even when I was going through my PhD, it was still a very difficult thing because I didn't have the money to sustain my family. At that time, I had managed to bring my family over. I had 3 children and a wife. She could not work because I was an international student. She was a dependent of an international student.
That's true. You can't
You're
work
not
with her.
allowed to work in the United States. So that was what we were living through. So we were having to, my wife had to braid hair, to try.
To do
She
other
even
things
tried,
to make ends meet.
exactly. She even tried to do babysitting, but we had a young child that was 3 months old at that time, and we went to people and they say, are you going to be taking care of your own child or are you going to be taking care of mine? So, there's going to be a conflict of interest. So
Yes.
please, we can't. We are sorry. So things like that. So I have I know what it means to have been a security officer, gutting homes, cleaning homes, doing all sorts of things. Then,
All jobs to
yeah.
survive.
Then back in school, I am doing tutoring and tutoring my mates, helping them with statistics, helping them with math and things like that. That's how that's where I got money to be paying for my tuition, and managed to do all of that until I was able to graduate. In fact, when I graduated from PhD, Sandra, you'll not believe me this. When I graduated from my PhD, I had a great job, serious job in Michigan, right? And they wanted my credentials, like my official transcripts to show that this is who I was, right? To give me the job. I've gone through the interview process, the screening and everything. I came up, top and all, and they're offering me a job. But because I was still owing money at the University of
Oh,
Texas, I could not have the transcript. So I had to go to a title loan. I don't know if you know title loan, I owned a scrap car back then. I had to go and you take the title of your car and go and surrender it, and so that they can give you they loan you money. And so that in case something happened, they can come and repossess that car. That's what I did. And then ask money from my friends to be able to finish the tuition that I was owing so I can get my official transcript, so I can tender it. So
yes,
that
because if you don't get that job, how do you pay?
exactly. So
Oh
that's
my
what I
God.
have to do in order to get my first serious job. You know, but that today is history. While when I went through all of that, so I got employed as at H1B. H1B is when you have so
Yeah,
employment of,
HB1, HB2.
yeah. So as a skilled worker here in the United States. So even today, I got my permanent residency through the skilled employment program for the
Yes.
United States government. So it was when I went through all of those hoops and got to where I was, and I said, there's a reason why I'm here. And I kept those words again. If God brought you here, make no small plans. So when I started working, then I said, you know what? I didn't come to this place now to settle down and say, well, now I can pay my bills. Now I can do all of that. That was good, but that is not good enough. I began to think to myself, how many of people like me
Are
um,
there
that,
in the village that you need
that
to help?
started exactly that started off
Mm.
in the village.
Make no small plans.
That don't even know that they can do something like that. How many? And I thought to myself, what are the chances that somebody from my village could be where I am right now and doing this kind of thing, and that's where I began to seek, like, what is the bigger purpose? What is the bigger purpose? And I remember when I just moved and I started working at that time too, I was going through a serious, very dark moment in my own life
Yeah.
with my, in my marriage and all of that. My wife and I were just going through it was just this difficult moment that lasted not just an hour, not just a day, not just not just a week, not just a month, but months. And that was even a time in my life, for the very first time, that I contemplated divorce. Like, I mean, like, what is it's so difficult? Things are so challenging. What's this? But in the middle of that darkness, you know, probably the greatest light that could ever happen to me, or greatest thing that could ever happen to me, really break forth out of that, which was that. And I was going through that period, and I would just spend time and go to the basement of the home that I was living in at that time. And I just kind of like, oh God, help me. What's going on? Like, do something, help me. I need help. And one day I kind of felt like a voice asking me, like, okay, what are you going to do about this? And I said, no, I am powerless. I am helpless. Can't do anything. I need you,
Mm.
God, to help me. And then I still heard that voice again. So what are you going to do? At that time, I was approaching 40, in terms of age. I was not yet 40 then, but I was going towards 40. And I had this thing where I was already thinking, like, what do I want my 40 to be like? What do I want my 40s to be like? I'm sure you are familiar with the proverb that says a fool at 40 is
The
a
food
fool forever.
forever.
So I was thinking, like, man, I'm going to 40, I want to be somebody. That is the time that you can't afford to be a
You can't
fool.
afford to miss it.
So I was kind of like preparing for that season, and then this darkness period came again. And so one day I just found myself making a resolution, what became that I became known as my legacy statements, where in the midst of all of that confusion and darkness, I took my pen in the bottom of my basement and I began to write down, and I said, it actually became like my promise to God and myself, which was that I said to myself, Lord God, if you permit me, to live the next 40 years of my life, okay, because I was approaching 40, so I was like, in my next 40, so this is what I commit myself to being.
Mm.
I said, number one, I want to be a husband who loved the wife like Christ loved the church, because I'm a man of faith. And I said, that is what I want to do. Second thing, I want to be a father who raised his children in the way they should go. Number three, I said I wanted to be a professor who taught more than information systems or the subject matter, but who taught life to his students. Number four, I wanted to be known as a citizen of Cameroon, because I come from Cameroon in Central Africa, who served his motherland. And lastly, number five, I wanted to be a leader who helped men and women around the world discover, pursue, and achieve their God-given purpose in life. And these five
You want to
things,
be a leader who helps
men
the
and
last
women,
one?
who help men and women around the world discover, pursue, and achieve their God-given purpose in life. And these five things became the things that I live for. And when I made a decision about these five things, the kind of husband I want to be, the kind of father I want to be,
Father.
the kind of professor, the kind of citizen, the kind of leader, when I made this decision, I knew that I was none of those at that time. So that is what triggered my growth process. Because I was not that kind of husband, I began to say, who do I know that is
A
that kind
good
of a husband?
husband. So
So,
he can mentor you.
so that can mentor me. I began to say, oh, so who do I know that is that kind of a father, so that they can guide me? Who do I know that is that kind of a professor, so I can follow them? Who do I understand that is that kind of a citizen, so I
Awesome.
can model after? Who is that kind of a leader,
Who
so
is
that
helping his motherland?
exactly. So who is that kind of a leader, so that I can follow? And so it was that decision in 20,
That was a turning point in your life.
yes, it was that decision in 2013,
Hmm.
2013, 2014 that made me to seek after that. And so it began to bring now mentors in my life. That's when now John Maxwell came in the radar, because a friend of mine went to a John Maxwell conference and came back and said, Madison, I know that
The
this thing,
same way I told my husband, he must be there. You
yeah,
can't be in a John Maxwell program and not invite people who have great words to you to be there. I told everybody I see, if you know what is best for you, save money. Come there, your life will change.
and my friend told me, he said, Madison, I know who you are. I know what you are trying to accomplish. I've been with you
Which
all
of your
these years.
friends? Is it your friend that came before you?
No, it was another friend. So it was another friend who was under my leadership, who was one of my, who served under me in leadership. And so when he went to Jamaica, he said, Madison, this is just who you are. I can see that this is your line of calling. And so I know how you've tried to help us, help all of us that have.
How did he even come to the country? Did you help him to come in?
Okay, good. He came in before me. And all the help I gave was just giving the moral support and everything, emotional support, and he came to the country. And so when he came now and he was doing well for himself.
But the great thing you did, you were keeping communication with those people.
Yes,
You had a
sure,
connection.
sure, you're right. And so that's the person who introduced me. That said, whoa, wow, that's really. Then I remember the first book I read, which was developing the leader within you. And I said,
Yes.
wow, that would be a good thing to go. But now he told me, it's going to cost you a little bit, it costs you some money. And then he told me I just said, you see, Lord, no, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money.
We
Where
need
can
to
I
start
get it?
thinking this thought. And I'm
You know,
enjoying every deed, and I don't want it to go. Just keep saying, but maybe we'll have to just, be fast on it.
good. So, but cut a long story short, I started heaping mentors. I got into the Maxwell leadership, and I got a mentor that was modeled husband for me and modeled father for me. And I started developing myself. I started myself on a self-development journey that that cost me quite my whole life.
Martin, I hope you will not be angry. I'll bring you back again. You have a
Okay.
great story. Sincerely, you have. Very emotional for me. I wish we can go on, but I try to make this not more than 50 minutes with
Yeah.
all that advert and everything. But you're speaking the mind I want to talk about. That's the reason I want to join this meeting.
Yes.
The mentorship meeting I told you about, the started since 9:45.
Yes.
I just had to open my laptop just to click join, but I said I must finish my discussion with you
Thank you.
because getting this time might be pretty difficult again. But
Thank you.
sincerely, the essence of mentorship, Madison said it right. I need it in my life, no matter. Some people are like, "Oh, you've arrived." I'm not. I'm just starting. I've not gotten there. But the essence of having someone who would hold your hands and walk you through that route of leadership is so critical. You might want to do a summary about your mentorship, what you enjoyed, and how life turned around for you having a mentor, so that others will know the essence of having a mentorship, having a mentor in their life. And maybe I'll give you a lot of gap. Maybe sometime in October or November, I can bring you again. That story where you stop, you continue. It's actually very mind blowing. For me, I've learned a lot. And I know the viewers too have a lot of their daughters full. So let me give you 1 or 2 minutes to wrap up on the mentorship, the essence of having a mentor.
So it was the desire to be these 5 things that I talked about that drove my growth. And when just to fast forward from that time, from that time till now, and then so in the space of 7 years, by that time when I made that decision, again I told you I was not any of that. But between that time and now, we're able to create 2 organizations. Between that time and now, we have been able to train leaders over 15,000 leaders in 55 countries in a very short period. I have been
Wow.
with presidents, I have greeted prime ministers, senators, all kinds of people in a space of 7 years because I committed to growing myself.
Wow.
Suddenly the world opened to me. And everything started from that seed of deciding, this is the person I want to be. I am not yet there. I am going to do whatever it takes to become that person. In the process of becoming that person, look at, I was able to do much more than I could ever dream in all of my life.
What a great story. I have been blessed, and I'm sure others have been inspired to go doing a great thing. Go think about. I don't want to say much because Martin has said everything. Just listening to you, as also changed me. I will have to come back to call you. We'll talk behind the scene, but it's a mind-blowing story. I'm really thrilled, and I believe lives will be touched by your story. You need to write a book on your story and how you started. It's a great one, sir. Really great. And I want to thank our viewers. I also want to thank you. If you're just joining us on this show for the first time, please kindly like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and please share. It is said that a leader is a person who knows it and shares it all to others. Martin was just a role model. He knew it, and he was ready to impact his world. He was ready to help everyone in Cameroon. And just recently, he just did a training. I know if I start that now, we can't finish. That's why I said I need to bring you, because you need to tell us how you put those things together, how you impacted your world, and how you're still changing lives. Thank you so much. And I also am proud to be identified as a friend to you, being that, husband that loves his wife, a father to his children, much more, much more. I can't say it all. But I know that God just started with you. Many more God is going to do through you and your generations. You will look back and thank God that, you met with the Lord. And that's an advice to everyone. If you've not met your Lord, you're not in connection or any relationship, you need to go back. That was the beginning of Madison's transformation. And you don't want to be left out. Thank you so much. Do have a blessed evening. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Are you thinking of how to publish your book on Amazon, or how to get your published book to become an Amazon bestseller book? Dip Insight Books is the perfect in-between solution in transforming your ideas into a book. We can help you with all the complicated parts of publishing, such as process TO transformation. What we do: full manuscript evaluation, receive quality assurance edit, full copy edit and final proofread to remove spelling and grammar mistakes, oversee your cover design, create your interior layout, publish and distribute your book, lock down your marketing strategy. Ghostwriting, where there is no manuscript. Our goal is to help you publish your book promptly. Contact us today at 404-740-9091. Email us at info@dipinsightworld.com. To start the submission process, check us out at www.books.dipinsightworld.com and submit your details. You can visit our Facebook page at Dip Insight World.